Hey guys, and welcome back to Psychic Celluloid Signals. Tonight we saw Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
You saw the doc.
Yes. And it was accompanied by Philip C. Carli,
Yep.
as was the case with The Phantom Carriage, which we saw a while back. And it was also just fantastic.
Oh yeah.
So he also did an intro, which was really informative, and some of the things that we kind of heard him talk about will come up in our review of this. So in our kind of insight. So stay tuned. um, so first, any initial thoughts or impressions coming into this, since we didn't do a before reviewing?
My thoughts coming into this were twofold. One, super excited. This is a film I've been wanting to see for a long time. So I was, yeah. Also, don't know what to expect. I've had read quite a bit about the film in passing, not about the plot and set, but its importance within cinema, specifically horror cinema. But I had never actually seen the film, so I was excited to see, what would happen.
Word. Yeah, I felt the same. I was very excited as well, and I haven't seen the full film before today. I've seen part of it. As I was telling Glenn, after seeing this, I did see part of it, but I was interrupted, and I forget what streaming platform I was watching it on, but when I got around to trying to check it out again, it was not there, and I was disappointed for a while, but I'm kind of happy in a way that I got to see it in full for the first time on 35 millimeter, projected at the Dryden. And just going off of that, the film print was fantastic.
Yes.
As Carli mentioned, it's one of the nicest
in the world.
Yeah. And we were kind of curious about this film print in specific, because it does look very nice, but the intertitles look very nice as well, but they're in English. And if you are familiar with this film, it was made in it's a German made film, so we weren't sure if the intertitles were from when it got brought over to the U.S. back then, to be shown here, or if they were more modern. Not sure how modern, but we just found that kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, they were really good, and they were pretty seamless. I've seen some films, especially in foreign languages, where the film itself looks a certain way, and the intertitles kind of don't quite fit, like they look too new or something. So that was kind of yeah,
Definitely. The print was absolutely gorgeous, and as was the accompaniment, spot on. What did you think of the set design?
The set design was one of my favorite parts of the film.
Same.
It's very dreamy, I think I would say, in a
kind of nightmarish way.
Yeah. It's very claustrophobic, and as we learned, that was actually not really intentional. It was due to the fact that the studio it was shot in It was pretty small, yeah. So, and they shot all of this inside. It was all like, all the buildings and stuff were painted on walls and what have you. So they had to do all of this within a building. All these like buildings inside of a building. So it made for very like narrow sidewalks and what have you in the film, and it also made for, I think, just kind of like interestingly geometrically wise, interesting shapes to the like buildings and architecture in the film, which kind of added to that nightmarish dream kind of quality. Though unintentional, it was really interesting.
Also, the claustrophobicness of how close the buildings were together, it added to the sense of entrapment. The whole every that's a word, right? Is that that's not the right whatever. But all the characters in this film are somehow trapped. It seems. One of the first people to be offed is trapped by a prophecy. There's a mental institution. Obviously, that's a place where you're trapped, and the character, the killer, is trapped, and he's in you could say it's slavery to Dr. Caligari. So there's that.
Yeah, the set design is really one of the things I think that makes this film, and that has given it its legacy, and also is kind of, I think, one of the biggest things that's associated with this film is the look. And
as well as the costume, and
makeup. Segueing right into that, the makeup, and as well as the just kind of expressionistic, dramatic way that it was performed, very much is, I think, how this film is remembered, and the film's legacy, what it inspired, and how it inspires, I guess. So, tell us a little bit about the story, Glenn.
The story in particular, or the story of its making, or
tell us a story, Glenn.
Well, what's plot time? So in the film, we start with two young gentlemen, and they both, first off, love the same woman, which is a problem, and they decide to visit a fair, a traveling fair, and they end up in the tent of a magician, a conjurer by the name of Dr. Caligari, with a somnambulist.
Somnambulist.
I can never pronounce that right.
Sleepwalker.
Exactly. Thank you. And he just so happens to be able to tell the future. And one of the characters asks a question. I won't reveal what the question is, and does not get the answer he was looking for. And things get murderous and mayhemy from there.
Yeah.
The madness ensues, if you will, to go back to the whole madness theme.
Yes. Yeah, that's how it plays down, and it's I don't know, I thought the story was captivating.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it was interesting that we kind of heard that there not only is there part of this film that's still missing. We found out, I don't know exactly how long, but there's a certain section of the film that remains missing. But not only that, the original written script, I guess, differs a bit from what we see on the in the film itself. So not only is it interesting and story wise, there's more that was there. So it's interesting to kind of think about what could have been there, what was there, and how it's pretty impressive that it still works out quite well.
Just adds to the whole mystique of it.
Mm-hmm. And I think also like some of the other things that kind of add to the mystique, at least now, are some of the kind of, for lack of better word, like old schooly techniques and looks. Obviously, it's in black and white.
It's a silent film.
Silent film.
That in itself is exotic.
Yes. But we liked, some of the things like if you watch some old, generally silent black and white films, you'll see like the transitions with the pinning out and in. We thought, again, as I mentioned, the title cards were enjoyable. They were well written, and sometimes they weren't so much title cards as they were like bits of text, which were done well as well, because those weren't translated either. Those were actually in English, but they looked they fit seamlessly into it. So it was like somebody would like open up a book and it would go to like what they're seeing, and it looked exactly like what we would think they would be seeing, but in English, which is pretty interesting. And this is also, some would say, the first horror film.
No, it's not. Who said that?
And care to add?
I don't want to pronounce his name wrong, so why don't you say it, Josh?
Carli.
Okay.
Not 100% sure if I pronounce it correct either, so I do apologize if that isn't correct. But
he touched upon this and in his introduction, and discussed a little about how some people claim it's the first horror film, and he basically said, while there are certainly other films that could claim this title, with all of them, including the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, someone's always waiting to say, oh, nope, this one was, and I just did that. To my understanding, the first horror film is, most people believe, is George Méliès's, The Haunted Castle? I think that's what it's called. Or A Night in the Haunted Castle, something like that.
Something around there. It's a translation at any rate.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess, while that may be the case, I think it'd be more accurate to say it's the first one. It's the only one. It's the first one surviving. There probably was. I wouldn't be surprised. Other ones, we lost 80% of all silent films, and we lost what? There's only how many films surviving of his? I don't remember the exact number. I think he shot like 600. So he could have shot an even earlier one that used horror elements. But that's an interesting little bit to the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari's whole history. Is it's possible, what would you say?
It's definitely like a pioneer.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, saying something is the first horror film, you have to define horror film and film, like does a short count, does it have to be X amount of minutes, which just is like, what, 58 or something like that, give or take? But yeah, what defines those terms, other than film having to at least be like a motion picture of some sort, I don't know how you can without
then you could say maybe something like a stereoscope. was a moving picture in a way, if you wanna. So.
Yeah. So like it's yeah.
Nitpick.
Yeah. So who knows? It was a groundbreaking kind of early picture, and I think more important than whether or not it was the first horror film was
It was one of the pioneers.
Yeah.
It was one of the earliest ones.
And it did a lot to influence American audiences with regards to German made films. I guess we learned that it kind of shown American like producers and whatnot that these German guys could make films really cheaply and make a really entertaining film. So they started to bring over German directors, and the rest is history, so to speak. But what did you think about the film as a whole? And would you recommend it to anyone who, if so?
I would definitely recommend it. I think it was a very engaging film, a very visually and narratively appealing and interesting film. I'd absolutely recommend it to any horror fan who hasn't seen it, and I recommend it to anyone who isn't a horror fan. You know, I know people who don't like horror movies, and you know, not only because it's silent and made in the 20s, but I think Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is still scary. But I think it'd be one that people who don't like horror could weather through and would talk about afterwards, if only for the visuals. So everyone should see it once, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'd recommend it to anyone who's interested in film and film history. I'd say it's just a really unique piece of that puzzle, which is the entirety of
Definitely unique.
film history. And I'm sure there are films that you can compare, but I've never seen one that's exactly like this. So for that reason alone, if you have an interest in film and want to kind of broaden your perspective of films, what they can do, and how they can look and feel, and just
Where they come from.
yeah, then I definitely recommend checking it out because it was really just interesting above all else. So yeah, definitely give this one a look. And before we go, we'd like to thank the Dryden for putting this on.
Thank you very
It was
much.
excellent, and it was actually the first in a series of films they're going to be showing regarding kind of mental illness, which is called their After Bedlam series. We want to see, we want to see as many as we can, time permitting, and other in previous engagements permitting. But we're really hoping to see, among others, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
A Page of Madness.
And really all the others we can. But we definitely recommend, if you're in the Rochester area, to check them out because they're definitely going to be interesting.
Oh yeah.
And
you know, mental health and mental illness is in the news quite a bit now, so you know, it's timely.
yes, very timely. So with that, I'll say keep it psychic, guys, and keep it real.